Welcome to the fourth installment of Rainbow UCT's Acronym Series. I am Kara Sutherland, the Outreach Coordinator for Rainbow UCT. I identify as non-binary and I use she/her pronouns. This week's letter is T for trans, and I'm joined by two beautiful people to discuss challenges and aspects of life that often come with being trans and/or gender diverse in South Africa. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to our channel. You can also check out our other videos that we've posted in the series, and don't forget to put on notifications. Thank you. Alright, panel, please introduce yourself with your name and the pronouns that you use.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, hi, my name is Zoey Black. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
I'm H, Lambe, and my pronouns are they, them.
Alright, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Zoey Black is a human rights activist and blogger. Zoey graduated from UCT as an actress. She is the Legal and Education Advocacy Officer at the NPO Gender Dynamics. Follow them on Instagram at Gender Dynamics with an X. She runs a blog on zoeyblack.com, focusing on many things, including her experience as a transgender woman. Zoey, studying towards her Bachelor of Laws at UNISA, has intentions to further assist vulnerable persons and communities in accessing their rights. She hopes to contribute to development of policies and legislation which will promote and protect the rights of vulnerable people. Thank you so much for joining us, Zoey.
Thank you for having me.
We also welcome H. H is a 21-year-old non-binary person from Cape Town. They recently graduated from UCT with a degree in English literature and film, and are now working as a front of house at a tattoo studio. Long term, they hope to work to bring inclusivity and diversity into both Cape Town and global tattoo culture. When they are not working, they are usually writing or making art. It is a pleasure to have you, H.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited.
Thank you and welcome to each of you again. I'd like to start by asking both of you to share with us some of the journey you have taken to come to your identity today. How did you know, or how did you reach this point you are at today?
Zoey, do you want to go first? Should we just say that Zoey goes first for everything and then I'll go up?
Okay, sure. I guess for me, I remember there was a day for me very, very vividly. I was living with my partner at the time, and I was in the bath, and I was scrolling on YouTube, like watching like these random videos, as one does. I then came across a YouTube channel. I can't remember what its name was, but it was a channel that was run by a woman studying toward her PhD in, I think it's gender therapy. And then she had this channel about asking a whole bunch of questions like, how do you feel about your body, X, Y, and Z, and she goes through this list of things. And then she goes, well, if you experienced any of this, then it is possible that you might identify yourself as trans. And I was like, huh? That sounds like me. And then I watched the next video and the next and the next and the next in the series that she had posted. And I was like, okay, oh my God, no, that's me. And then suddenly for me in that moment, it's like I acquired a vocabulary that I never had before. And I was able to express how I felt and thought about myself for the longest time, but just never had the words and the vocab to do it. And suddenly this woman comes along and I watch this YouTube video and I'm like, oh my God, that's me. And so I get out of the bath and my partner's sitting in the lounge and I say to her, babes, I think I'm trans. And then she goes, okay, cool. And that was the end of the conversation.
Wow. That's really cool that she was so immediately accepting.
Yeah, I don't know if the moment is a little bit too overwhelming. So the only thing she could say was, okay, cool. But yeah.
If I may ask,
yes.
How old were you when you sort of came to this realization?
Goodness, it was a few years ago. I think I might have been 25, 26, I think. Yeah.
That's really amazing because, or important to hear your story because there's lots of narrative about there's lots of representation of stories of having people who have always known from like a very young age that they are trans. So it's really validating to hear your experience as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, like just to elaborate on that a bit, so for me personally, like I think I'd always in my space of being knew who I was, but again the lack of vocabulary to articulate that was absent. So how does one then express how one feels if one doesn't have the means or the language to do so? And so language then becomes a very, very important part of the conversation in terms of about how we talk about trans experiences and our lived experiences.
Wonderful. Thank you. H, would you like to start?
Sure. So I must have been around like 14 or 15, and there was always like Zoe said, there was like a feeling that I didn't know how to articulate yet. I remember I was on Tumblr or something, and I came across this blog where someone was talking about non-binary identities, and at the time it was more like a social feeling. I don't know how to explain it. It was like a way that I felt around other people more. That's like the first inkling that I had of it, that I was gender diverse. And I was like reading this person's experience about how they realized they're non-binary, and it like kind of stuck with me, and I was like, that really is, we have very similar stories actually, Zoe. I was just like, that is how I feel. And then it was just like a process of figuring out which label, not that labels are necessary, but like just for my own clarity, which label I felt worked with me the most. And then it was like a process from there. But yeah, it was around when I was like 16ish, or 14 or 15. I can't remember what I said.
Has your identity developed at all over the past years, or?
In some ways, it was weird, because when I first realized that this was what I felt like and what I was really overwhelmed by it, and I was very, very afraid of coming out. So for a long time after I realized this, I just pretended that I was cis and let people continue calling me she, and like I could just pretended that it didn't bother me, because I didn't want to have to confront the process. You know, it was very intimidating. But in allowing my identity to become like outward, it really has deepened, and I'm at such a comfortable place now where it's like such an integral part of me that I don't even worry about nuances like labels anymore. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks again. I'll move on to the next question now. So, another aspect affecting transgender and gender diverse people in South Africa are the legalities around changing one's name and or gender legally. Have any of you changed your name legally? And if so, what was the process like?
So I have changed my name, but I've only done so very, very recently. I I honestly don't know why I put it off for so long. Like for years, I put it off. I guess it didn't necessarily, or I thought it didn't like impact my life because everybody knew me as Zoey, so it wasn't necessarily an issue for me. But then there were all kinds of issues around when one is to, I don't know, go through the airport at security, and then you get stopped, and then like funny faces and things. And so eventually I did change my name legally. I think like maybe like 2 months ago only.
Oh, wow, congrats.
Yeah, and I don't know why I just thank you. I don't know why I just didn't do it earlier. I guess because I've just been so busy. It takes time to take a whole day and go sit at the Department of Home Affairs and get your name changed.
So what was that process like of going to Home Affairs? Was it easy? Did you feel accepted, or?
So I went to the Department of Home Affairs in Wynberg. Now, the branch in Wynberg has had specific training with a number of trans advocates and medical professionals that work with transgender people to provide training for the staff at Wynberg. So Wynberg's branch is a little bit more, let's call it trans-friendly than the other departments are, just because they've just had training. I've heard like harder stories from people that have gone to Home Affairs to have their names or their gender markers changed. It's just been, so I went to, I was advised to go to Weinberg. I did that and it was relatively smooth. Again, the process of going to have your name changed effectively involves you re-registering your birth. So it takes time and process, and the bureaucracy and the stuff at the bottom of Home Affairs is not like the best functioning system ever. But yeah, I did, and it wasn't that big of a stress. I think I was out there by like 2:00 after sitting in the queue since like 6:30.
H?
Oh, sorry. I don't know if you want.
Sorry, yes, over to you, Ash.
So I have not changed my name legally for a number of reasons. Actually, H was supposed to just be an interim name between my dead name and like deciding on a new name, because I didn't know what I wanted to change my name to, but I just knew I didn't want to go by my dead name anymore. So I was just like, everyone just call me H, just for like a couple of months while I sort my shit out, and then I'll let you know. And everyone was like, cool. And now it's been like over a year, and H is just kind of stuck, and everyone just knows me as H. And if I could, I would just make that my name, but I feel like I don't want to have to answer all the questions about it every single time. So I have not confronted the legal name changing process until I know what I want to change my name to. And even if I do change my name, I'll probably just still go by H, but then be like, and it stands for this new name that I'll make my legal name. So I've only changed my name socially. But even that experience was like amazing. I really didn't, none of my friends or people in my circles were like, that's a ridiculous name or anything. Given that it's only one letter, it's mostly just like strangers who are like, surely that's not your name. And I'm like, it is, shut up. So yeah, I can't really answer for the legal process, but the social process for me was really amazing and very touching how much support I got with it.
Yeah, that's completely valid. And of course, we're all allowed to take as much time as we want with all our processes. And even so, you don't necessarily have to change your name.
Exactly.
If you are comfortable with it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so expanding on that, is it possible to change one's gender legally? And are like non-binary genders recognized by the government? Do any of you know anything about that?
Yes.
Zoey?
So in our current legislative framework, we do have provision for legal gender recognition in terms of changing your gender. But that process is highly pathologized. So in order for you to change your gender marker on your ID, you have to have 2 letters by 2 independent medical professionals attesting that you have had effectively a gender reassignment, and that is defined as an ongoing process, not necessarily as like a fixed moment in time. So you don't necessarily have to have surgery, or you don't necessarily have to be on thingy, but if the medical profession just has to attest to the thing, you have to then submit those 2 letters to the department, along with, again, re-registering your birth, to have that marker change. And then you wait a period, and then that gets approved, and then you've got to go and reapply for your ID. Currently, the legislation doesn't allow for a third or non-binary gender marker. However, so I work for an organization called Gender Dynamics, and part of our work is that we work in policy reform, particularly for trans people. And one of the things that we are pushing and we are engaging government with is to provide for a third gender marker in the ID. So it would be an unspecified gender marker, usually with the letter X. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Excellent that you're working towards that.
Yeah.
I had the suspicion that you would be. Keep going.
Yeah, I did research about it a while ago, and there's no way yet to make your gender marker like an X or unspecified. And it's been something that I've grappled with for a long time, because when I started going through gender therapy, which I know that there's a question about, so I won't go too deeply into that now. But there was a lot of talk around like, oh, what are you going to change your legal name to? And are you going to try to get your legal gender changed? And like, are you going to do all these legal processes? And I understand obviously the importance of that for trans people to have their like legal documents reflect who they are. But for a lot of trans people, that also isn't something that we want. And it felt very much like the process I had to confront all these legal aspects that I didn't necessarily want to yet, at least. That's also something I think is important to be aware of, that like you are as valid whether you decide to undergo these legal processes or not.
Definitely. Of course, I think one of the special things about, the whole LGBT community is that there's such a wide range of experience, and everyone's experience is, different from the next person's experience in some way or another, and we can't forget that. So thank you. So leading on from what you were talking about, the next question is about physical transitions and gender therapy. So what do you know about access to hormone therapies and or gender confirmation surgeries in South Africa? So starting with, how can South Africans get access to these healthcare services?
So just very, very broadly speaking, access to gender affirming healthcare in this country is difficult. It is a problem. Currently, the state has very, very limited facilities that cater for trans and gender diverse persons wanting to undergo a medical assisted transition. So I know the one in Cape Town is Groote Schuur Hospital, and I think there's another one in Pretoria. I think it's Steve Biko, I'm not sure. But there's one in Gauteng as well. So these are two specific state facilities that do accommodate for gender and for trans and gender diverse persons. It is difficult to access that process. In order to gain access to the program, one needs to have a letter from a therapist or psychologist saying that you are effectively, again, pathologizing you, diagnosing you with what is called gender dysphoria. And then you get referred to the hospital, and they will then refer you to an endocrinologist who then does an examination, who then only puts you on thing. And that process, because it's the state, can take a number of months to do that. The other option is to go private, and to do it privately is quite expensive. And so accessing that kind of healthcare then becomes a matter of economics. So if you can't afford it, it becomes very, very difficult to access that. So you have to go spend your entire day sitting at a clinic or a state hospital in order just to get the access to your hormones, if that is something that you are opting for. For surgeries, as far as I know, in terms of state facilities, those waiting lists are over 20 years, because the state only allocates X number of surgeries per year to gender affirming surgeries. So you got to wait if you want those surgeries. Otherwise, privately, again, the cost is extraordinary.
It is an extraordinary cost. I was lucky in that I went the public route, but I was able to pay for my gender therapy myself. And that I really recognize like how lucky I was to be able to do that, because otherwise the waiting lists are like insane. People need this shit. Like people need this, and you have to wait so. Sorry for saying shit, by the way. It's really like not ideal, the system at all. But I am eager to share my own experience with healthcare and gender affirming therapies, because a lot of people don't think that as a non-binary person you are eligible to receive hormones or surgeries of any kind like that. And I was super nervous when I went to the gender therapist to get cleared to start hormones, because I thought she was going to be like, "Oh, you want binary trans? Get out of here! Like you don't get to do this. You're just like, you know." And it was really nice in that she was not like that at all. And I can really recommend the therapist at Groote Schuur, because she was really open to learning more about non-binary gender identities, because for a lot of medical health practitioners, they don't know a lot about non-binary genders yet. And especially because I wanted to take hormones in an unconventional way, I microdose on hormones instead of taking a full dose. And the doctors and therapists that I encountered were really eager to learn about that. So it is, the system has a long way to go, but it is, I think, slowly getting there, you know.
It sounds like you had to do a lot of research beforehand.
I did a lot of research about microdosing and the effects that it would have, and I had to like show the doctors this research because they were like, "Is that a thing? Like, can you just do that?" And I was like, "Yes, you're the doctor here. You should know that." Yeah, I had to do a lot of research about it.
Seems kind of I guess unexpected from like a medical side of things, because the patient becomes the person informing the doctor instead of the doctor informing the patient.
Yeah, but in a way it was nice because it showed that they were open to this new thing, you know.
Yeah, of course. So you said you went the public route.
I'm a bit hazy on the details because it was a year or so ago, but I definitely went through Kutaskid, but then I think it's if you try to get the therapy sessions covered by the government, then the waiting list is longer to get started than if you are able to pay yourself. Correct me if I'm wrong, Zoe.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go through the state therapist, you got to wait beyond the state therapist waiting list before you can get onto the waiting list for the other things. So
it's just a lot of waiting.
Sometimes better to just pay the therapist initially to refer you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a process, and I mean, it's really difficult to get like the information about this because I mean, for example, for me, I've Googled, various processes that can be done, but in South Africa, and then the only thing that I could find was this blog published in 2015 about I think it was Helen Joseph. So where can we access this information? Do you know?
So this has always been one of the struggles for trans and gender diverse persons. So I don't know if you need to go, like if you're let's call it cis. If you're cis and you need access to stuff, the information is readily available. You can just Google it quickly and the thing pops up there. But if you're trans, you really got to do like your homework and like got to dig to find that information. And I found that particularly hard in the South African context. Found a lot of content for UK and the US, wonderful. Some for Australia, yeah, but nothing here. So that was part of the reason I started like a blog, because I was like, there's just no information. And so you often find that trans people are doing their own homework, like H said, schooling the doctors in terms of their own therapy, which is just the most bizarre thing ever. There are a lot of organizations now that are providing. So my organization does this. Gender Dynamics has on their website a set of resources for both people wanting to undergo such therapy, and then also documents for healthcare practitioners to be able to provide such services. Another organization that does this is Iranti, and the other one I think is Be True to Me. So there are a number of organizations that on their websites generally have this kind of information. But those are like the only places where the information exists. It's just bizarre, I guess.
Also, another way that I think information like this is given a lot is by the trans community just like informing each other. Like I think everyone has that trans parent that like guided them through the process, and then every trans person becomes a trans parent to someone else. So that was the way that I was really fortunate, is that I have such amazing trans people in my life and in my circle who are so open with their resources and their information, and take the time to be open and explain these things to people who don't know about how they can access these things. So the trans community really, really shows through for each other. And I think that's a big way that information is shared.
Yes, of course. The whole reason why it's the LGBT community is that, community, I guess, is very important. I'm also aware that not everyone has been able to find a space in that community, not simply because they don't know anyone else. And I think that can be very difficult, because one can feel very much alone, and like you're fighting the government on your own, or navigating these processes on your own.
Totally.
It's difficult for people who don't have communities. And I hope that people can find communities that they can feel accepted in.
Online, if nowhere else, like on social media.
Definitely.
Is a big way.
Yes, of course. All right, so sort of following, I guess, on that point is, if one is unable to access these services because of either money or being on a waiting list for 20 years, or because their family is unaccepting, what advice do you have to offer for those struggling with gender dysphoria, I guess?
I guess literally right off the top of my head, my first thing that I would say is one, there's nothing wrong with you. Two, there are people around. There are always people around who are willing to support you. I know that there are many organizations who are assisting trans people who are in that kind of situation. That is usually the focus of such organizations, to provide access and protection for people who otherwise can't do so for themselves. Gender Dynamics is one, Iranti is another. Matimba is an organization that works specifically with children and youth, trans and gender diverse youth, and they are very happy to assist. For me, always, I say, if you are feeling alone, if you are feeling like you are unable to do a thing, find somebody, even if it's somebody that you don't know. Online is a wonderful space. I think that for me was also where helped me a lot when I was when I eventually came out and came into my own, was finding a kind of community online, or at least a person, somebody that you can talk to. If not, like, DM me, I guess. Maybe I can refer you or put you in touch with somebody. It's always better to have a person or somebody with you to support you if you are struggling with anything. Yeah.
I also know that dysphoria is so big, especially considering how intense passing pressure can be. When you aren't able to pass socially, it can really fuck you up. And I keep swearing. It's something that I'm really passionate about, is how even within the trans community, I feel like there's this pressure that's like encouraged to pass, and if you don't, or unable to do that, or don't want to do that, then there's like a hierarchy. It's really messed up. So I really am passionate about this. And as far as like easing dysphoria goes, when you're unable to access these expensive things, or you're like unable to because of your family or anything like that, for a long time before I was confronting how I was feeling, I was just dressing up in my room. Like I was just like tucking my hair inside a beanie and like makeup and clothes, and like experimenting with that can be a way that you can ease that kind of dysphoria if you're unable to access things like binders or anything else like that. Yeah,
and I think aside from surgeries and medical transitions or therapies, I guess there's an aspect of getting things like binders, or I'm not sure what the trans woman equivalent is, but yeah, what is access to those kinds of things like in South Africa?
Well, I can speak on binders. It's relatively easy to order a binder online. I'm not entirely sure if there are any places in South Africa that sell. At the time that I bought mine, I don't think they were, but they are pretty pricey. Like they're pretty expensive, and it's also difficult because the sizing can be confusing. And I thought for a long time that I needed a binder. Like I was like, I need to own a binder if I am to feel valid in my identity. And now I don't even wear that thing. Like I hardly wear it. And then that also comes back to remembering that you are just as real in your identity and your gender, whether you subscribe to these pressures that exist to pass a certain way or not. Like I am just as valid as a non-binary person having boobs than if I bound my chest, you know? But in terms of if you do want to binder, there are quite a lot of resources online. And I even found like the best thing that I found to bind so far was a 200 rand sports bra from Total Sports that was comfortable and it fit me properly. And it did a better job than my 900 rand binder. And I have a big chest. Like I don't have a small chest at all. So yeah, you don't have to invest in a very expensive binder if you don't want to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think again, the diversity of experience and the diversity of wanting different things is obviously entirely valid and wonderful or beautiful. Zoe?
So yeah, so the binders are generally expensive. It wasn't, as far as I'm aware. They haven't always been available in South Africa, like as readily available. I know now that Iranti, who is based in Johannesburg, does. They do provide a service where they can procure binders for people if I think it's like at a very, very reduced cost, I think. So Iranti is the one place to go there. But generally speaking, the binders are expensive. And that again speaks to access, like how how do you access that if you're not of economic means to be able to do so. So that has always been a problem with the trans and gender diverse community is the access and economics.
And then it leads people to bind in unsafe practice, like in unsafe ways, and people can't access these things. Not even just with binders, with many things, and they have to resort to doing it in an unsafe way.
Yeah,
which is obviously not a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, we have to be very careful how we do things, but also concerned about the economics of all these things and how unequal, I guess, a lot of this access is. I think we can move on to the next question, which is again kind of about labels and expectations of what does it mean to be trans or gender diverse, and what are the expectations around those different aspects. So some transgender and gender diverse individuals are not concerned about the pronouns others use for them, but to others, using their preferred pronouns is very important and is a form of basic respect for them. Both of these opinions are obviously valid, but I'm keen to hear from you about what your personal views on pronouns and what your experiences of changing your pronouns have been.
For me personally, I identified more on a feminine spectrum. So she, her pronouns for me fit better. And for a long time, I was very insistent and pedantic about my pronouns. I am less, again, personally, less concerned with my pronouns and how people identify me specifically. And that has got a lot to do with my view around how I perceive my own identity and my comfortability in who I am. So I don't necessarily need the validation from other people in order to affirm my own identity. I do admit that there are circumstances where it does impact me. So for the most part, I would prefer that people call me by my pronouns. And I do think pronouns are important if the person places value on those pronouns. And it has to, for me, move from person to person. If you're somebody who doesn't place particular value on pronouns and you don't mind that, that's perfectly valid, and that person should be allowed to not care about it. Likewise, the same respect has to be afforded to the person who does care about their pronouns and who it does matter to, and so that should be respected as well.
Yeah.
I was very... Oh, sorry to interrupt you.
Continue.
It took me a long time to start asking people to call me by non-binary or gender-neutral pronouns. And when I did, I'm very lucky in that my circles are accepting, and people were, for the most part, like, absolutely, hell yeah, that's amazing. And obviously, like with they them pronouns, it's sometimes difficult to remember because it doesn't really come naturally to refer to one person as them. So for me, if people slip up, it's not like I'm like, screw you, like as long as there's like an effort there, but the effort to remember is what means the most to me. And for me, it is important to me that the people who know me and who know my whole deal remember to call me by my pronouns. But if some like woman at the supermarket calls me she, I'm not gonna be like, hey, like my pronouns are they them, because she doesn't know, and she's like just going based off my appearance, and I understand that I'm usually pretty femme presenting as well. So for like random people on the street, I'm not really like too fussed. Obviously it is fine if you prefer for like people who don't know you to know your neutral pronouns. That's also obviously valid and fine. I just don't have the energy to be telling every single person and then explaining the whole thing, you know. So yeah, for me, like my friends and my immediate family, it's important to me that they make an effort with the neutral pronouns. But for like randoms, I don't really mind.
So on the aspect of family, how did changing your pronouns in your family go? Was it smooth or difficult, or yeah?
I remember coming out to my mom first, and she was very okay with it. And so I had to explain to her, you know, baby steps at a time. And so I would like to use these pronouns and and it took me a while to I had to constantly check her and remind her all the time. And now, even still today, she slips up now and then, and I don't mind it. And so she self-corrects herself now, which is amazing. And that is all I can ask from another person, you know, just to be mindful of that space. My extended family was a little bit more difficult, solely on the basis that I don't see them very often. So I have less contact with them, so they have less contact with seeing me and engaging with me, and so therefore are not reminded as often that I have now changed my pronouns. So, but again, doesn't really bother me too much. For the people that matter to me, I think my pronouns matter to them, and that for me is important.
For a long time, for me, I wasn't out to my family just because with being non-binary, it's like older people usually know what like trans is, but they don't know what like non-binary is. So it's another conversation. It's like I'm half trans. Like it's like I'm kind of, then like I'm having to try to explain. So I came out to my mom and my dad, maybe in like grade 10, but it was a terrible conversation. It wasn't planned. I was crying. It was just like, I don't know how I'm feeling. And like, it didn't go very well. They were accepting and they were like, okay, like it doesn't matter. Like, we're going to love you no matter what you are. I didn't explain anything to them. I kind of just like yelled it at them and then like ran into my room. And then I came out again a couple of years later because they didn't really understand what I wanted from them. And the second time I came out, they were really amazing, and they were really like tried super hard, especially with my name changing as well, with pronouns and my name. They really try a lot, and it's amazing. My dad, like you said, my dad self-corrects when I'm not even in the room. Like it's been reported to me by my mom that my dad will like correct himself if he doesn't call me them. So that's been really like amazing. I'm so lucky to live in a family that is so accepting. Some of my extended family know, but not all of them. Like I don't feel the need to tell all of my family, you know, like I like Zoey said, I tell the people that matter, and if they care about me, then they'll try, you know. Also, it's just like it's such an emotional labor to come out over and over again to all of your family. I don't think it's entirely necessary. For me, at least, it wasn't. I was like, I don't see y'all ever, so I don't see the reason for you to know. Don't worry about why my voice is deeper. It's okay. Don't worry.
Yeah. I think that it can be very difficult if you yourself are not entirely sure about what you want. And I think in being transgender or gender diverse or non-binary, I think there's obviously a lot of things you have to think about, you know, how do you want to express yourself and how do you want to be treated? And I think it can be quite difficult to bring your cis family along with that transition, with that thought process of trying to figure out what you want. So yeah. I also, this is particularly relating to they them pronouns. I came across an interesting idea on social media to use the use of they, them pronouns. And I'd like to share it with you and ask what your thoughts are. The idea is to use singular concord instead of plural concord when using they, them pronouns, as referring to an individual person. So, for example, instead of saying they are at the shops or they are beautiful, one would say they is at the shops or they is beautiful. As one would with other singular pronouns. Of course, either is okay, and I mean, it's the nature of language that, language changes and should change to fit us. And I ask this as someone who is contemplating changing to they, them pronouns. So what are your thoughts?
So I do.
Go for it, H. Yeah.
So I thought about this for a long time. Like not a long time, but I've been thinking about it since you brought it up to me the other day, Paris. And I'm like not entirely sure how to word how I feel about it. I obviously if someone wants to use they them pronouns in this way, like go for it, like do it's you, I feel like it's already such a conversation and an effort to get people to agree to saying they are about someone, and the argument with like, oh, it's grammatically incorrect is so rife that I feel like if it might be an extra fight to try to get people to agree to they is on top of the already existing like pushback against they as a pronoun for one person. So I feel like because we're only just beginning to see people like mainstreamly accept neutral pronouns, I feel like trying to introduce another aspect that is unconventional may make the conversation more difficult. That's just how I feel about it, and that's why I personally wouldn't use singular concord with my own pronouns. But obviously that's an issue in and of itself. It's an issue that we have to consider making things easier for other people when it's our business and our identity we're talking about. We shouldn't have to be like, oh, but it's so hard for them to remember, and like it's such an awkward thing to change to, like just deal with it. But like trying to be realistic as well it's like a so that's my thoughts on it.
I often get quite frustrated with people who are saying that, oh, it's grammatically incorrect to use they, them pronouns for a singular person, because, the nature of language is such that, it moves and evolves with time, and we govern language. Language doesn't govern us. Language is supposed to be a tool to communicate, right?
Exactly.
And if it can't communicate what we want it to communicate, then it needs to change.
And like, how are you gonna care more about grammar than someone's whole being? Like,
exactly. Yeah, I don't know. That was just a thought that I was been thinking about and wanted to bring out to the world, I guess. So yeah, both of you are working individuals. So what has been your experience of being trans or gender diverse in the working world, and how have you found that?
When I studied theatre and performance at UCT a while ago. And I worked in the industry for a bit, and then subsequently started working at a theatre company, a human rights-based theatre company that used to perform life skills-based shows in schools for littlies. And so my work environment was such that it was very inclusive and very framed in a human rights-based context. And so when I came out, I was currently working there. And I don't think I would have otherwise been able to, again, come out in a work environment had I not been working there, because the environment just was conducive and was appropriate and just nurturing in such a way that I could do it, and I knew that I would be supported in that. I know that for a lot of people that experience is not one that they share. Lots of people come out in working environments, and it is hard and difficult, and people are not understanding and accommodating and inclusive at all. I've personally been very, very lucky in that kind of aspect. The arts has always been a very liberal space, and so they've for the longest time been accommodating of a range of gender identities and sexualities as well. So the concept isn't new or foreign. And so if somebody does present in a particular way and insists on presenting in a particular way, people go, oh, okay, cool, yeah. So I've been very, very fortunate in that kind of way. I then subsequently went to work at a film school again within the arts. So I was accepted there. That said, that sector just because I work in that sector doesn't excuse every individual in that sector from, or preclude them from potentially being triggering or being abusive or being problematic. There are always people that I encounter day to day in my working life that are problematic, that I have to check them all the time. And it is exhausting. It can be really, really exhausting if all one wants to do is actually just focus on the work and do the work and get it done. There's this other side project that you have to do in order to just get by, which is really, really annoying and sometimes can be very, very damaging and psychologically taxing as well. I think I've, over a period of time, developed a particular type of resilience to that kind of behavior where it doesn't necessarily bother me as much as it does, as it used to. But I've kind of been making an active point to be more firm and more calling people out on it. Because I have a thick skin about it, the next person might not necessarily. And so that might impact them a whole lot more differently than it does for myself, if that makes sense at all. So I'm trying to, like, it's called be activist in my day-to-day spaces all the time.
Yeah, that's really good, and I guess nice that it's very nice that you've had a relatively accepting work environment. And I guess commenting on the advocacy side or advocating each in your daily life, I think that it can be very difficult, like you said, if someone just wants to focus on the work and then they have to be an advocate every day. But yeah, I guess each one's experience. Yeah, it's difficult in the work environment. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But H, yes.
So at my current job, I am. So for all of my previous jobs, I've just gone by my dead name because it's on all my like banking shit and like it's like on my ID, and you know with jobs you have to submit that stuff. So it's just a conversation I didn't want to have, and I'm lucky that I guess in some ways I'm lucky that I don't look gender diverse. You know, and that, so that there isn't really a conversation unless I want there to be one a lot of the time. And in my current job, I introduce myself as H, and because it's a tattoo studio, they weren't going to be like, now what's your real name, you know, because a lot of tattoo artists go by like a tattoo artist name. So they kind of just all accepted me as H there, and they didn't really have any, like none of them have ever asked me what my birth name is, which is like great, but it's not because they think that I'm gender diverse. It's just, you know, and I haven't come out as non-binary in a workspace before, not because I feel like, oh well, it's just like it's sometimes just easier to not have to account for yourself all the time, you know, like to just go to work, do your job, like without having to have the conversation. And I know that there'd be lots of questions about it, and sometimes you just don't list to explain yourself to people, you know. So yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with being out at work, just in terms of like name stuff. Like I can comment on that. Yeah, which a lot of people haven't even heard of non-binary genders, you know, like a lot of people it isn't even on their radar. So it's like the education process can be really taxing, and you don't want to have that all the time. But existing as a queer or gender diverse or trans person, a lot of the time your whole existence is answering for yourself, you know.
I guess it's difficult to balance, defending yourself and defending your identity with, doing your job and wanting to do the work that you are doing. So, yeah, it remains a challenge for all people of minorities in working environments, I guess. Would you like to share any words of encouragement or advice for those struggling in unsupportive households, and especially during this time of current lockdown?
And yeah, I know the lockdown has, for some people, been very, very difficult, particularly if you're living with people who don't affirm your identity, who are abusive in any kind of way. And so that might be a very, very difficult situation. It might also be very, very difficult for people who are living on their own, who are cut off from their support networks. I don't know. I guess I'd said the same thing I said before. Like just reach out to somebody, talk to a person if you need to, or I don't know, make a phone call and sit in silence if that's something that you need. The best thing I can say is just reach out to somebody. There's always somebody who is willing to listen to you or sit with you or talk to you or whatever. Yeah. Like you're not alone. Like you're really not alone.
I guess my words of encouragement will be similar to Zoe's, is that like also just like you can DM me, literally, like I'm doing nothing all day. You can like totally DM me if you need someone to talk to. I know what it's like to feel like you don't have any and I guess like it's not gonna last forever, even if it feels like it might. You will find your clan and you'll eventually be around people who do affirm you and who do see you as who you are. So just similar words.
Yes, thank you so much. Last question is, are there any projects or socials that you'd like to promote? And I guess socials that people can reach out to you on, maybe.
If you want to contact me on Instagram, at Zoey Black ZA. You can find me there. If you are looking for like resources and stuff like that, go to Gender Dynamics' their Facebook page or their website, Gender Dynamics with an X at the end. I've got like amazing resources and stuff like that. So all the projects that I'm doing currently is through Gender Dynamics. So we are, again, because it's my work, we are working towards policy reform. We do work in education spaces, in providing inclusive education for all people. So those are my areas for Gender Dynamics, where I work specifically. Find me and we can chat. Yeah.
I have Instagram and Twitter. I'm not like involved with any kind of projects at the moment. But definitely, if you want to reach out and talk about anything, I'm drudgling on Instagram and Twitter, DRUDGELING. So yeah, like my DMs are open on everything, so you can come and find me and talk about anything if you need to. I know that a lot of non-binary people don't know a lot of other non-binary people and don't know how to approach the gender therapy process, so I'm more than happy to give any advice about that, having gone through it, if anyone needs information about that, especially, and anything else,
Thank you so much to both of you. It was a pleasure to have both of you and to hear your experiences.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah, yes. Thank you. This is awesome.
Right, so we can wave goodbye to the camera. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, bye, everybody.
All right.